The hour of 10:30 having arrived, I'm going to call the Higher Education, Finance, and Policy Committee to order. Representative David, you have a motion for us.
Mr. Chairman, I move the minutes from Tuesday, March 19th, 2024.
Representative Davids moves the minutes from March 19th. Is there any discussion to the motion? Representative McDonald.
Mr. Chair, Representative Davids doesn't have quite the flair that Representative Wolgamott usually does. Do you want to try that again, Representative Davids?
Mr. Chairman, no.
Good answer, Representative Davids. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion prevails. The minutes are approved. Members, I'm going to move that House File 4024 be placed on the General Register. I'm then going to move the DE2 amendment, and then we have a couple of amendments to the DE2, so we can't adopt it until those amendments. So I'm moving the A2 amendment to the DE2, and Mr. Hopkins is going to describe it.
Mr. Chair and members, the A2 amendment to the DE2 makes some adjustments to various provisions in the bill in order to maintain cost neutrality.
So with that, I'm going to ask if there's any discussion to that amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor of the adoption of that amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Amendment is adopted. Representative Rarick, and I think you have the A3 amendment.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So in my work with OHE on the section of law that I had put in place back in 2015, there was a statutory reference that was missed. I had asked them to do the statutory reference to stalking so that all of the crimes are actually statutory referenced to actual 609 crimes. And that was missed. And so my amendment is adding stalking with the meaning of 609.749, which is the reference specifically to the stalking statute, so that it's very clear what we're talking about, Mr. Chair.
And Representative Rarick, you worked with the office on this already, so they know it's coming?
Mr. Chair, it was a discussion that I was very clear about in my office, and I think it was missed when they did some of the other changes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Representative Cleaborn.
Yep, Mr. Chair, I don't really have a problem with what Representative Rarick is asking, or Lead Rarick is asking, but would this mean that the bill would then have to move to public safety?
I'm going to deflect that to one of our staff. Mr. Hopkins.
Mr. Chair, it's not creating a new crime at all. It's just cross-referencing an existing criminal statute. It doesn't change the criminal statute. So this is something that's enforced and enacted by higher education institutions. It's not a criminal process.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the clarification.
Okay. Representative Rarick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would say that this actually makes it more clear, not less clear, because they were actually creating a new definition for stalking, and I won't go into the whole long reason why, but the stalking statute was struck down by the courts. Representative Pinto and I rebuilt it, so it's really important that you actually reference that because we have had legal issues in the past. So when we're doing reports on crimes, we actually need to say which crimes, and the way that was defined stalking isn't the actual definition of stalking, and so I wanted to make sure that we are reporting what we're intending to report.
All right. Representative Rarick, any other additions to that?
That is all I have. That's just the one amendment that I have.
All those in favor of the Rarick amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion prevails. The Rarick amendment is adopted. Members, I think we have put the amendment in order, so I'm going to have staff walk through now the amendment. I don't think I can say that again.
Mr. Chair and members, so the DE2 amendment as amended, this consists primarily of sections from House File 4024, the Office of Higher Education's policy bill, as amended by this committee earlier. However, there are some other bills that have been added in here, and I'll point those out as we move on. Section 1 of the bill pertains to the American Indian Scholars Program, and it just aligns the program's eligibility criteria so that it's the same as other similar state scholarships. Section 2, this is also from the OHE bill. This codifies the transcript access law. Sections 3 to 8 are the changes from the OHE policy bill to the sexual harassment and violence policy. Section 9, which starts on page 10 of the DE. This is the new requirement in the OHE policy bill requiring navigators for parenting students. Section 10, this is also from the OHE policy bill. And this is on page 12 of the DE. This requires certain protections for pregnant and parenting students. Section 11 and 12 are changes regarding the inclusive higher education statutes. Those are from the OHE policy bill. Section 13, which is on page 14 of the DE. This is from Representative Hansen's bill. So it's the RISE Act, the Minnesota Respond, Innovate, Succeed, and Empower Act, which, among other things, sort of standardizes some of the documentation that a student will have to provide in order to show a higher education institution that the student has a disability. Section 14 on page 17 of the DE. This is Representative Coulter's bill, which regulates online program management companies that contract with higher education institutions to provide student recruitments and help manage their online programs. Section 15 on page 19 of the DE, Consolidated Student Aid Reporting. This is from the OHE policy bill. It requires OHE to consolidate its mandated reporting for multiple financial aid programs that it administers, so we won't get a lot of separate reports, but they'll be consolidated together. Section 16, this is the Summer Academic Enrichment Program. It clarifies some of the eligibility criteria because of the changes to the free lunch program now. So it talks about reduced price school meals under the National School Lunch Program, which still does exist, even though all school meals are free in Minnesota now. Section 17, this is from the OHE policy bill, order of aid calculations. This allows OHE to determine the order that students' financial aid awards are calculated in if the student is eligible for more than one program. Sections 18 and 19 affect the Fostering Independence Higher Education Grants, or the FIG program. This program is a little overextended right now. Section 19 prioritizes applications on a first-come, first-served basis and also allows for a waiting list for the program. Sections 20 through 24, these are all from the OHE policy bill, and these are some technical, clarifying, and cleanup changes to the North Star Promise program. Sections 25, which is on page 26 of the DE2, and Section 26, which is on page 27, are both changes from the OHE policy bill to the self-loan program. Sections 27, which is on page 27 of the DE. This begins some changes to the Minnesota Private and Outstate Public Post-Secondary Education Act. This deals with the Office of Higher Education's regulatory functions as for registration of private and out-of-state public schools in Minnesota. One of the main changes that's made is it adds a definition of physical presence in Minnesota and also updates many of those sections to use that new definition of physical presence. It also corrects some references to the Code of Federal Regulations, the federal rules. Section 34 of the DE2, which begins on page 33. So this affects, these are all also from the Office of Higher Education's bill, House File 4024. These are amending the Private Career School Act, which deal with the Office of Higher Education's function as a licensor of private career schools in Minnesota. Section 35 adds a definition of physical presence along the same lines as for the Private School Act. It also uses that definition throughout the bill. Changes to the Private Career School Act go all the way up to section 44, the DE2. Section 45, which is on page 43 of the DE2. This is Chair Pelowski's bill, which adds energy to the list of programs that are eligible for workforce development scholarships, which are administered by the Min-State system. Section 46, this is from Representative Wolgamott's bill, amending our appropriation in our budget bill last year to the University of Minnesota for the medical school on the St. Cloud campus. This doesn't affect the amount of money, it just changes what the rider says the money can be used for. Finally, there are two separate repealers on page 26. They're separated out because you'll notice the Section 47 repealer has an effective date that's later. And that's Section 47 repealer is from Representative Hansen's bill. It repeals the old statute regarding the policy requirement for students with disabilities and replaces it with the new language that's in this DE amendment. And Section 48, this is from the OHE policy bill. It repeals a reporting requirement that was moved in Section 11 of the DE.
All right. Representative Rarick, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do. On page 45, line 45.12, 45.13, this is the section for the University of Minnesota and the $10 million that were appropriated to them for the Central Care Health System campus in St. Cloud. And my question before was, we had just an endowment fund, and now it says scholarship endowment fund. And I'm just wondering, I know I had brought that question before, and I'm wondering what is a scholarship endowment fund and how is that functioning differently than a scholarship fund?
Mr. Hopkins, Mr. Savory?
Chair and members, I think the key difference here would be that the dollars could be used to beef up a fund that would already be in existence or add to a fund already in existence to do scholarships versus establishing a fund that would have recurring scholarships. Maybe a key difference, but beyond that, I'm unsure.
Representative Rarick.
So, Mr. Chair, when we have public testimony, I know that was a question that was asked, and I did get an email shortly before we started about the breakdown of the $10 million and how they intend to use it, how the University of Minnesota intends to use it. If they could answer that question as to why we still have, to me, it's more confusing to say a scholarship or an endowment scholarship. Scholarship endowment, I guess, is what it says, fund. And why that language is there. If they could explain that and what their intent is. It looks like from the email that I got that they intend to use between 2 and 2.5 million for that scholarship fund. But I want to know how that functions and why we've got this endowment word there.
Representative Rarick, we have a list of testifiers, and we'll start with the list I have, and we'll add the you to it. So
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
let's go to the testifiers. The first person I have, the Commissioner Olson. Welcome to the committee, and please identify yourself for the record.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. For the record, my name is Dennis Olson. I'm proud to serve as the Commissioner of the Minnesota Office of Higher Education. Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to quickly walk through some of the highlights from the agency here within the policy bill, and thanks to Mr. Hopkins for doing such a thorough walkthrough already. I'll just provide a few highlights, but I want to start by just acknowledging how truly grateful my agency is to see so many of our recommendations reflected in this bill here before the body today. Every conversation that I've had with members individually, with you, Mr. Chair, during these hearings or outside are just a reminder of the dedication and passion that this committee has for advancing higher education. Everyone's partnership here is greatly appreciated, and it's clear it's benefiting Minnesotans in every corner of the state. Mr. Chair, I just want to specifically recognize you too. I mean, since 1987, when you were assigned to this committee during your first session, you know, you've been such a strong advocate for higher education, and after such a distinguished, you know, nearly 4-decade long career. I can only imagine how surreal it must feel to know this is maybe your last omnibus policy bill hearing here. Retirement's going to be sweet, but probably not sweeter than listening to a commissioner walk through some highlights of an omnibus policy bill.
Commissioner, thank you, but my last bill during this time in 2014 was only 2 sentences. This is a little bit longer.
Mr. Chair, I continue to be reminded of that, that's for sure. So, Mr. Chair, I'll start just with North Star Promise. This bill addresses concerns we've heard from campus financial aid offices by redefining gift aid, and this definition will now exclude financial aid supports earmarked specifically for emergency assistance and food and housing, childcare grants, and required supplies. So appreciate the collaboration there. This change is, of course, vital for ensuring North Star is implemented as intended and does not impact other aid that students qualify for beyond tuition and fees. As was just acknowledged, one item that's been covered in the news recently is that this bill would create a waiting list for the Fostering Independence Grant. And, when we first did projections on this grant, we never, of course, imagined the level of interest that we're seeing now. It's certainly an amazing outcome of the creation of the program, which is only a year old. But, the estimated number of students doubling from year 1 to year 2 is really something that was shocking to us into a brand new program. So of course this has resulted, as we acknowledged, in a projected shortfall of nearly $5 million for the program. But a wait list will ensure we're able to stay in close communication with all eligible students and provide support as we're able. I'll also note that the recent data that we've collected shows that a majority of Fostering Independence Grant students report annual incomes that would qualify them for other state financial aid programs. And so I appreciate our financial aid staff who are keenly aware of the expressed concerns and issues and are 100% committed to working with students and advocates to explore and come up with some unique solutions. And I also appreciate the advocacy of Representative Hicks and others here in the committee for committing to finding solutions as well. Finally, we commit to ensuring that all current eligible participants are made whole this year as we continue to work on those solutions going forward. Separately, this bill enacts policies to provide the state with a better understanding of student experiences on campus. This provision is vital so that we can make more informed decisions and recommendations. As an example of this, it includes requiring public colleges and universities to report additional data on students, on programs, on finances and outcomes, specifically information on parenting students and student debt and balances owed, and student demographics. This bill also expands protections for students by prohibiting schools from withholding transcripts or restricting enrollment for students with balances owed, except under certain circumstances. And further, schools will be required to have a policy on how they collect student debts. This bill would also require public colleges and universities to designate navigators to provide information to parenting students on support services and resources, and establishes additional rights and protections for pregnant and parenting students. This bill makes many meaningful changes on how we address sexual misconduct on campus. It'll expand and clarify the definition of sexual misconduct for the purposes of college policies and support services. And Mr. Chair and members, the final part of this bill I'll mention is that it would require private career schools and colleges to be licensed to operate in Minnesota and meet certain standards. Taken as a whole, this omnibus policy bill puts students first. It ensures they have the protections and supports necessary to focus on their education, while granting the Office of Higher Education the ability to collect better data and hold institutions to our state's high standards. I appreciate the support for this bill thus far. I hope you will continue to support the provisions contained within it. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think Representative Rarick has a question. Representative Rarick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner. You had mentioned a couple things that I was going to ask, which one, the foster grant program. I'm wondering how much are we short? I had heard a number from the Senate. I'm wondering if you could verify that. And when you said that we've had a doubling of students, how many are now requesting the foster care grant?
Commissioner Olson.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, excuse me, Representative Rarick, we projected nearly $5 million shortfall at this time. When we did the initial projections in November for the Minnesota State Grant Program, we at that time had a projected spending balance in the state grant program, and were successfully able to transfer within our transfer authority $3 million into the Fostering Independence Grant Program to hopefully buoy the program a little bit. And so even with that, we're still projecting now $5 million. In terms of the actual number of students, applicants, and grant recipients, we do have staff here that could answer the specifics. I don't have that exact number on hand.
Representative Rarick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great, thank you, Commissioner. And also, how does this work with the North Star Promise Act? Because I'm assuming these kids are probably fall within that parameter, and so can you let us know how you see those two working together?
Commissioner Olson.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Representative Rarick. Yeah, they do work closely together. Fostering Independence grant funds are applied after all other states and federal aid and other calculated aids, so North Star would be applied first. The difference in the two programs is that the Fostering Independence grant program is up to total cost of attendance. North Star Promise will cover tuition and fees. And so there is still that gap from where tuition and fees end up to the total cost of attendance, and that's where Fostering Independence grant funds will be utilized.
Representative Rarick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I hope that, I don't know if we will have any budget whatsoever, and maybe we don't, and I think the chair has repeatedly said that we don't, but if there's any place that we could put some money, a $5 million ask in that area seems to be very prudent. We've made a promise to these foster care kids. They don't have a lot of options. They're literally wards of the state, and so I really hope that we can find some way to make them whole. I'm not sure how we would do that, but I'd be more than happy to work with the chair to see if there's something.
Representative Rarick, Representative Hicks has haunted my presence for the last 5 days with the refrain, she needs $6 million. That's all she says. So I'm well aware of the issue, and we're working on it. And we appreciate your support, too.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Coulter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, Representative Rarick, you had more? I'm sorry. Representative Rarick, I thought you were finished.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I'm happy. I was just going to say I'm very happy to work with you on that. I think it's a well-worthy endeavor, and it will really lift some kids out of a situation that they had nothing that they did wrong, and they found themselves in that situation. So I'm more than happy to do that.
So Representative Rarick, if you want to say we need $6 million, that would mean you and Hicks would need it, and that would clarify the message for me. So,
Mr. Chair, so spoken.
okay. Representative Rarick, you have some more?
Just really quickly, Mr. Chair, I wanted to ask a little bit more about the order of aid calculations, and that was another grave concern as, you know, there are actually some private folks that are doing some pretty big scholarship amounts. And can you just walk through just ever so briefly how you want to order that and how, just so everyone's clear, including the public, exactly what we're going to be doing, you know, like the Franzen grants where they're offering big scholarships. So could you just help us understand that and making sure that we're not kind of pushing that money away?
Commissioner Olson.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Representative Rarick, if I may, I'd like to call up a staff member from the Office of Higher Education just to make sure we get it exactly right to answer your question specifically. Looks like Financial Aid Manager Megan Flores.
Welcome to the committee, and please identify yourself for the record.
Good morning, Chair Pelowski, representatives. Thank you so much for the question. So the question was related to the order of operations. We have some language that talks about order of enactment. And so we're really looking at maximizing programs that were in existence and that don't go up to either full tuition and fees or full cost of attendance. So there are some award programs within the state where we do know students receive from multiple sources. So for example, a student could qualify for Minnesota Indian Scholarship Program and also qualify for North Star Promise. So the maximum, though, on that Minnesota Indian Scholarship Program is less than tuition and fees. So that would be applied first, and then we would look at other aid sources that are not that are helping contribute towards tuition and fees, and then look at North Star Promise. So that would be an example.
Representative Rarick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that helps a lot. I just don't want to turn away private scholarship money that's been coming in pretty substantially to change folks' lives. Thank you. Thank you for that. That's all I have right now. I do have questions later, though.
All right. Representative Coulter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and that actually sets me up very nicely because my question was on that same section. And most of my question was already answered, but I'm just curious, there's language on line 20.8 of the DE. If the commission determines that a greater amount of financial aid would be available to students by calculating aid in a particular order, the commissioner may calculate aid in that order. And it's the word may that I'm finding some confusion about. is the implication there that, in essence, I mean, the aid would be calculated in a certain way, but the office would then make a determination where a student may not receive the full amount of aid based on a calculation?
Chair and Representative, this is related to that financial aid gets calculated at different points in time. And so, and this is meant to also allude to that this would not be done on an individual student-by-student basis. That's not practical nor probable with technology, and would delay the aid process quite significantly for both schools and students. And so on a universal level, on a programmatic level, we would determine that order of operations. And this would allow us to, for example, if we had knowledge that we had a significant shortfall in a particular state aid program, and that another state aid program had a projected positive spending balance, that for that particular aid year, we would make a determination in advance so that our school partners could program their software, and so that we as an agency could move funds within that using our transfer authority. And so it's really just allowing us to say now that we do have a vast number of state financial aid programs, that we could have a little bit of flexibility to be able to change that order of operations if it would benefit students, and if there were available resources from one program and not in another. But I'm happy to answer additional questions if that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to make sure I'm understanding, what this refers to is sort of calculation of aid in the aggregate to students rather than on an individual student basis. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes,
Manager
Mr.
Flores.
Chair and Representative, that's correct. Although some of the programs do get awarded on a individual student basis, but this particular language is addressing more of a universal policy for our various aid programs.
Thank you for that clarification.
Representative Cleburne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to add my voice to the conversation about the fostering independence. I agree with Representative Rarick, Lead Rarick, that as a former guardian ad litem, these are the state's children, and just as a student would go to their parents and ask for those last dollars that they need to attend, this is the opportunity for the state that has made a commitment to those students who have been fosters to receive those last tuition dollars or cost of attendance dollars. And I think we as a committee need to do everything we can to advocate for our fosters. And so I just add my voice to that conversation as well.
Representative Cleburne, I think this is turning into a Greek chorus. Let's hope it's not a tragedy, though. So I appreciate your support, too, Representative Cleburne.
Chair, that will be up to you. Thank you.
Representative McDonald.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Question for Commissioner Olson, just in regarding Section 10, protections for pregnant and parenting students. In relation to students that are taking care of a sick one or a parent or loved one, the same principles afforded to them as far as the leniency and the availability of students not to be able to make up courses and then look at some of the lectures and things online.
Commissioner Olson?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Representative McDonald, that's not specifically addressed in the language here, and I'm not aware of the specific policies that protect that at the campus level, but this doesn't address that specifically.
Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And then prior to this new piece of legislation, what has the U done for those pregnant and parenting who are in school and taking care of their children and or their pregnancy and still taking classes? Was there any work to make sure that they were successful, and if they had to take a leave of absence, that they continued their major, and were also able to look at their lectures and do their homework online, similar to the language in front of us now? What has been done in the past?
Commissioner Olson.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Representative McDonald, if I may, I'd like to call up Miriam Cullimore, who can help kind of walk through some of those specific provisions that were in existence at the time and what this language proposes to address and, I guess, universally codify.
Welcome to the committee, and please identify yourself for the record.
Thank you, Chair Pelowski and Representative McDonald, for that question. Currently in state law, there was no protection regarding parenting and pregnant students in relation to having to take time out in order to care for their sick or ill children. There were some minor protections spelled out very broadly in Title IX. However, there's nothing that defines what a parenting student is in the previous language around Title IX. And so this is a way for us to provide better protection for our pregnant and parenting students at the state level, since we know Title IX rules and regulations are in flux at the federal level.
Ms. Kolinar, can you identify yourself for the record, please?
I'm so sorry. My name's Miriam Cullimore. I work for the Office of Higher Education as the Student, Parent, and Whole Family Coordinator.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Representative McDonald?
Mr. Chair, just a comment. I want to give you great credence and support on this piece of legislation in your bill. I think it's very important that we take care of those students that are trying to, or adults that are better in themselves. So I support that. But I think equally would be important is other students that are having challenges as well, not just new expected mothers and those who are taking care of children, but those who are also taking care of family that are ill. I think that we need to take care of all the students at all levels to some degree. But thank you.
All right. Representative Robbins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner. I had a couple questions. So I do support this increased support for parenting students, but I've never seen any cost estimates. So specifically on the navigators piece for starting in 10.19, do you have any sense of how many people we're going to hire or what this will cost? And will the cost be borne, by each institution? Is there like a requirement that they have to have so many or anything?
Commissioner Olson?
Chair Pelowski.
Oh, I'm sorry. Coordinator Kolinar.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you for that question, Representative. There is no cost related to the legislation before you in terms of hiring additional staff. This just requires that the campuses designate a person who would be the point person for parenting students to reach out to. The activities outlined in that navigator role are ones that are also currently being put in place by student support service providers, also Title IX coordinators on existing campuses. And so the intent here is to simply designate and identify who that person is that parenting students can reach out to for that kind of support.
Representative Robbins?
Thank you. I really appreciate that clarification. Mr. Chair, may I ask another question?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding the changes to the gift aid and the North Star program. Whoever you want to send up here.
Commissioner, you have someone else? All right, here we go again.
Manager Flores again, Mr. Chair.
Welcome back, Manager Flores, and I guess this is directed to you.
Thank you, Chair Pelowski and committee members. I apologize. I haven't finished my coffee. I don't think I introduced myself last time. My name is Megan Flores, and I work for the Office of Higher Ed, and I serve as a manager of our state financial aid programs. I had more coffee. Now you know me.
Thank you.
Can you repeat the question? So the question was about understanding better the calculation of the North Star Promise, correct?
Representative Robbins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so I read the language, and I understand, like, we're trying to make sure things for books, supplies, childcare, et cetera, do not count against it, is my understanding. But then later, so that's on page 23, but then later on page 24, it says, where did that go? Oh, sorry. I had it outlined, and now I can't remember. Maybe you could just walk me through, because we're taking out in 23.22 that the funds pay 100% of tuition after deducting grants and other scholarships. So I'm not sure why we needed to delete that since we've rearranged the definition of gift aid. So I just want to maybe just walk me through how it works so I can just be clear. Thank you.
Yeah,
Manager
definitely.
Flores?
Thank you, Chair Pelowski and representatives. So really what we're looking at doing is first, if you look at the very beginning of where that section starts, and we start talking about the definitions, and we're walking through, okay, who's eligible for the program, what is gift aid, and we define what that is. And the first part is defining how it is at the federal level, how it is at the state level. Unless it's designated for other expenses, then we talk about institutional financial aid. So that's aid that comes directly from a college or university from their resources, whether they're funded or unfunded. And then we also exclude that for designated expenses. Then we talk about private financial aid. So that's money from a third party or an outside resource. For all of those entities, we define that it's not work or loan study. And then we talk about those other expenses being books, supplies, childcare, emergency assistance, food and housing. And the meaning or the rationale for that is based on our stakeholder engagement so that we are not taking into account if someone receives, for example, childcare grant, that would subtract from the fact that they would get North Star Promise. Or if they get an emergency assistance grant or a stipend because they're a room advisor or community advisor, and in lieu of a wage, they're getting a credit for room and board. And then when you walk down further and we're talking about the section that you got to where we're looking at, I think it was the part on
23.22.
Commissioner Olson.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Representative, what was the specific section?
I'm sorry, 23.221.
23.
If we've rearranged all those definitions, I wasn't sure why we still were taking that piece out.
So that's defined actually above. So if you look at, instead of saying scholarship, we're saying gift aid, and then defining what is gift aid. So it's basically removing that line that says scholarship means funds to pay for 100% of tuition and fees after deducting grants and other scholarships. And then further up in line 23.4, we actually say what is gift aid. And then we break down that gift aid or the free money, which is any grant or scholarship or waiver. And then we talk about, well, what are the sources? There are 4 primary sources in the United States of gift assistance. So we break that down into federal aid, state aid, institutional aid, and private aid. Does that help?
Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that's very helpful. And then, so that then ties into 2426, where you're saying that the scholarship can exceed 100% of tuition fees after gift aid is deducted, and the gift aid excludes those other expenses. So it's still last dollar, but if it's after we've accounted for the housing, books, whatever.
Chair and Representative, that's
Flores.
correct. Yep, and so instead of referring in that further down 24.26 to grants and other scholarships, we're referring back up to
The gift aid.
our definition of gift aid in 23.4.
Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, super helpful. I just have one last question. So if someone gets this, then they don't get the state grant aid? Because the state grant aid, like if they qualify for the North Star, then that's its own program. And then people who don't qualify for North Star would go into the state grant aid. Am I understanding that correctly?
Manager Flores.
Chair, Representative, I think it'd be helpful if I give an example. So let's say we have a student at Metro State, for example, and that student is a full-time student, and they're eligible for a Pell Grant and a state grant, and maybe they have a scholarship from that school, and maybe a small community-based scholarship for $200. The way that it works is on an individual student basis, on a term-by-term calculation, the institution would look at the tuition and mandatory fees for the student. It would subtract out any Pell Grants, SEOG, state grant would get subtracted out.
See, okay.
And then the institutional or private money would get subtracted out. If any of the institutional or state money is for those excluded categories, it wouldn't get subtracted out. So if they had a child care grant, that wouldn't get subtracted out, an emergency grant. And then if there's anything remaining uncovered after those other resources were tapped into, that's when the North Star Promise program would come into play and cover that gap.
Representative Robbins.
Very helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Representative Kleber.
I just want to say thank you to the OHE staff. They're so knowledgeable and so helpful and can break it down to such a simple level. I just want to say thank you.
Much appreciated. I don't think we have any more questions for the commissioner or staff, so I'm going to move to the next testifier. So I have Mary Hoff next. Welcome to the committee, and please identify yourself for the record.
Thank you, Chair Pelowski. Chair Pelowski and committee members, my name is Mary Hoff. I'm testifying in support of Section 13 of the DE Amendment, the Minnesota RISE Act. I'm a parent advocate and director of the Minnesota Inclusive Higher Education Technical Assistance Center. The Minnesota RISE Act is addressing critical barriers college students with disabilities encounter and cultivates equitable access to post-secondary education. Currently, college students with disabilities face obstacles that hinder their enrollment, success, and graduation. Approximately 63% of students with disabilities choose not to disclose their condition and do not receive necessary accommodations. The lack of clear policies and the burdensome requirements to prove a disability has the effect of discouraging students from seeking essential accommodations. The number one reason students with disabilities do not finish their post-secondary education is not getting accommodations and support. As a parent of 4 college-age adults with disabilities, I know the obstacles are real. 3 of my children face barriers to pursuing their post-secondary education. Disabilities are lifelong, whether they're hidden or visible. I want to also just simply state that the Minnesota RISE Act has broad base of support through the student organizations, the university systems, faculty unions, as well as disability advocacy organizations. In fact, the legislation was drafted and strengthened through a collaborative process. Subdivision 5 of Section 13 is entirely student-driven and reflects the experiences of Minnesota college students with disabilities who are currently enrolled in Minnesota higher education institutions. The significance of the Minnesota RISE Act cannot be overstated. The legislation eliminates common barriers, facilitates increased participation, and recognizes students with disabilities as welcomed and valued students. We believe the legislation will lead to increased enrollment, self-disclosure rates, persistence, and attainment rates among students with disabilities, contributing to their overall success in their careers. So we ask that the Minnesota RISE Act remains in the omnibus bill this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hoff. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next on my list, Manager Frazier. Welcome to the committee, and please identify yourself for the record.
Chair and members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to speak before you today. My name is Ziguam Fraser. I'm the Policy and Advocacy Manager with Foster Advocates. I'm a mother, a foster, currently reside in northern Minnesota, and I'm a previous recipient of the Fostering Independence Grant. Today, I'm going to speak to you on the reality of what FIG has done for fosters in our state. This program has been life-changing. It has opened the door to higher education for many, and those doors did not exist before. There was no door, no hope of ever having a door. FIG has not only created a door for fosters, it has created homes. It has created homes where stomachs are full, minds are at ease, and hope has alivened. Fosters are only beginning to dream in our state, something we so very rarely get to do amidst the reality of our harsh circumstances. That dreaming has been replaced with a deep dread. We understand the need for there to be policy language to address the event of the shortfall scenario happening in the future, and as the testifier said so eloquently last week, we should never be in a scenario where this waitlist needs to be utilized. As a state, and as those who sit in positions of power, you have a communal responsibility and a duty of care to the young people receiving FIG, to follow through on the commitment that you all made 2 years ago. A beautiful commitment and a promise to care for them as they obtain their goals and dreams, something I assume you would all do for your own children. A promise to let fosters know we deserve the same educational outcomes as our peers. We deserve more than what our circumstances have allowed. I want to begin to close this out by naming, we know you here are busy at the legislature. We know this may seem like a small educational issue that simply needs a patch and you can move on to bigger, better, and flashier issues. But I need you to understand, and hope after hearing from myself and other testifiers today, that this is not a small issue for a population of young people that the state has committed to caring for. These young people will become homeless, they will become hungry, they will be sent into a survival mode that our state child welfare system trained us so well to live in while we were in foster care. They will lose hope. Losing hope is a dark place to be in this already heavy world. I urge and ask you to correct the shortfall, find and provide the necessary funding to support the original legislation, to fulfill your promise and duty to fosters, our children. And I really want to thank you for hearing the support we did here today. We have fosters here in the audience, and hearing you speaking up on behalf of this bill, it really means a lot. So thank you for your advocacy. Chair Pelowski, I know you're in a tough spot. I'm sure you're probably sick of people hounding you.
You have no idea.
I don't have any idea. And I appreciate your grace and your patience as we continue to stay on top of this for our community. So thank you for your time today, and we look forward to continuing to collaborate.
Manager Fraser, thank you. And this is a high priority for the committee.
Thank you.
We're hopeful that we will be able to either get a small appropriation or we'll be able to find a way to correct
Let
this.
us know how we can be a partner in any of that, and if you need anything from us.
I think you already heard from the committee, there are numerous members, and except for one of them, they've all been in my office the last couple of days. So.
I'll correct that, Chair.
All right. I then have Ada Smith is next on my list. Ada Smith. Welcome to the committee, and please identify yourself for the record.
Hello, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Ada Smith. I'm an employee at Connections to Independence, a former foster. 2 years ago, the Foster Independence Grant legislation passed. It was a huge win, a win for C2I, furthering our mission and removing barriers fosters face as they embark on their education and career journeys. But most importantly, this was a huge win for all fosters across the state and nationally because other states have modeled legislations after ours. With debt-free education becoming a possibility for young people who have been raised by the counties, we have seen increased numbers in people furthering their education, remaining stably housed, accomplishing their other goals. We've also seen a tremendous increase of hope in our young people's lives, a hope that have been taken time and time again. They now feel they can have a thriving future knowing that they wouldn't have to enter young adulthood in debt, homelessness, and less educated because they were thrown a hand that they did not choose. However, with the budget shortfall, this grant program could end up with a wait list affecting up to 40% of our applicants. We are finding this possibility out at the same time as the young people we serve. We are all extremely concerned. We've been getting calls from people panicking that they won't be able to finish their education, will end up homeless and lose their daycare and other general supports to survive. We cannot let them down. This is not a reflection of their desires or other potentials. This is a systematic failure. I'll now share an experience from a young person at C2I, Justin Marshinki. Prior to receiving a foster independence grant, I was working 50 hours a week while going to school full-time. Overall, for my education purposes, this had a negative effect. I was getting about 3 hours of sleep. I was typically working and then going to school in the evening, 16 to 18 hours a day. Since receiving FIG, I have been able to go part-time at my job, cutting down to 24 hours and 4 days a week. This has allowed me a lot more time to actually grasp the information that I'm learning while also attending to my child and being able to have the important family time as well. Please do not allow the state of Minnesota to break this commitment, which was only made 2 years ago. Those students who started college for the first time because of FIG have not even graduated yet. I am asking for your support to correct the projected shortfall for FIG and allocate funds from the state surplus for funding necessary to support the original legislation. Thank you.
Representative Hicks. And I know you need $6 million.
Thank you, Chair. I do. I need $6 million. They need $6 million. And thank you. I want to just say, this is a testament to why it works. And last year, this committee made a commitment not only to move FIG forward, but to add in the wraparound supports necessary for kids and students to be successful. And when we tell students there's money to help you go to school, but there's also support to help you do the things that you don't have an opportunity to do because the county raised you. And we did that. And we need to finish that work. And I know you've kind of joked, but I really have been stalking people. It's been
no
a thing.
joke.
We now have a definition for that, so be careful.
Representative Cleavorn, I can barely leave my office without someone coming up and saying they need $6 million, and that someone's in the room. And I want to thank the testifier, too. That was excellent testimony. Representative Hicks, are you finished?
2 more seconds.
Okay.
You're not the only person I've been stalking. And we need to do the right thing here. And this is difficult given our current situation. And so there has been folks across the table today who have expressed their commitment to this as well. And I would really welcome, I think we would all really welcome your support in advocating for a target that addresses this specific issue. So anything that we can do together, I think this is an issue that we can do together. And so just wanted to share that I'm totally happy to, plan a sit-in outside of Chair Pelowski's office with any and all of you.
Okay, I've got Representative McDonald next, and then I'll go to you. Representative McDonald.
Join me to sit in.
Representative Hicks, there was actually 27 seconds, not 2, but it was very important what you said in that 27 seconds. So thank you for going beyond the 2 seconds, because your passion for this is duly noted and very important. But I have a question for the chair or staff regarding the foster program. Wouldn't they be eligible, or couldn't they be, under the legislation we passed last year for those families who have an income of $80,000 or less?
Representative McDonald, I'd
North
have
Star
to have the commissioner come back down, and that might be a student-by-student answer, or Representative, or I'm sorry, Mr. Savory or Mr. Hopkins?
Cost of attendance versus
Mr. Chair, Representative, so the North Star Promise program hasn't begun yet. In general, most students that receive the Fostering Independence Grant have reported incomes under $80,000 and therefore would be eligible for North Star when it starts.
Representative McDonald.
That's all I need. Thank you.
All right. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Chair Pelowski, and thank you, Team FIG. I am really proud of how our youth and fosters have continued to show up at the legislature, and I'm going to cry if I talk about this too much, but I'm so stinking proud of you guys. Because standing up for what you believe in and what you need and what you know is going to make the lives better for the people coming after you because of your experiences is what makes this job so great. And it's because of people like you. And I just wanted to put that on the record that I'm really proud of all of you.
Thank you. I think we have, sorry, Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do not know the answer, so I'm just wondering, does anyone know if what the governor had in his supplemental budget for the Foster Independent Grants Program?
It was nothing. Representative Robbins, the governor's budget was a bit thin on almost everything for higher ed. With that, I do have someone from the University of Minnesota who made it from the Senate Public Safety Committee to come over. And Representative Rarick, why don't you, I'm going to identify you for your question. And I don't know if you have the bill before you.
I do not, but I'm aware of the endowment
All right, so
question.
Representative Rarick, why don't you repeat the question? And then please identify yourself for the record, too. And if you just identify yourself.
Okay,
for
you
the
want me
record.
before? Okay. Christine Keel, University of Minnesota Government Relations Office. Thank you.
Representative Rarick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you again.
Yes.
So my question was on page 45, line 12 and line 13. And now the definition or the explanation of the fund is scholarship endowment fund. And if you could explain how a scholarship endowment fund works differently than just a scholarship fund.
Ms. Keel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's the same. It's just when we get monies for scholarships, we put them into an endowment fund. It's just not in an O&M fund, so we put it in an endowment fund, so we can use the earnings of the principal to give scholarships and keep the principal balance in the fund.
Representative Rarick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so that's what I thought. So they're going to put money in a fund and use the interest to do scholarships, not the underlying money.
Ms. Keel.
Mr. Chair, that was our intention, but after hearing the testimony, we consulted with the chief authors and said, we are fine if we strike endowment. And so that is a committee, that is a committee decision. It will change, the length of time in which we can give scholarships, so we'll just have the 2 years to do that, in which we have the appropriation until.
Representative Rarick.
So, Mr. Chair, this is really a policy decision, and I believe this is your bill, underlying bill, and of course the DE. So I just wanted to make sure we're clear, we know what we're talking about, because they literally are talking about just doing the interest on the money we're giving them to do scholarships, not the underlying money, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Keel.
Mr. Chair, that is correct. We were hoping to extend the life of the ability to give scholarships.
And thank you for coming over so quickly.
Yes, I apologize.
appreciated.
Right when I got Mr. Worth's text, I was going up for another bill, so my apologies.
All right. And I think at this point, I am going to move adoption of the DE2 amendment as amended, and then we'll discuss the bill as amended. So my motion is to adopt the DE2 amendment as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion prevails. The bill is now in form, so members, to the bill as amended.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Rarick.
Mr. Chair, I'm wondering, I'm sure this is going to go to Ways and Means, possibly? No, General
Representative
Register.
Rarick is going to the General Register. There's nothing in this that would have to be dealt with at Ways and Means.
Correct, because of policy. So, Mr. Chair, I'm wondering if you would be willing to strike the word endowment so that it's just a scholarship fund, or was your intention in this legislation to have only the interest of the money that we're giving them go for scholarships?
Representative Rarick, I have a very few rules, and in fact, most of the committees I've chaired, I have only rules, and we define them operatively as the issue comes up. I'm not very favorable to shoot from the hip amendments, but I will deflect to either Mr. Hopkins or Mr. Savory. Can that amendment be done now and in a fashion where it would both be workable and understandable? Yeah. We've adopted it, right? So we have to go back and undo it and then do it again. This is where. Apparently, we then would have to unadopt the amended DE2 and then amend it and then re-adopt the amended DE2, which gets to be a little klutzy. Representative Cleavorn.
Mr. Chair, I'm kind of like you. I don't like amendments on the fly. I would say that you would have time to consider this, and you could always bring a floor amendment if you so desired.
Representative Cleavorn, that would be my preference too. This bill's moving forward. It's likely to go, well, it'll be on the floor for one thing, which is the least place I'd like to do an amendment, but if we have to. It's then likely to end up in a conference committee. And that would be a rather easy thing to change in a conference committee. So, Representative Rarick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that would be, whichever way it gets done, I believe that our intent as a legislature was to give them scholarship money that they would then disperse and not just keep that in a fund that drew interest, and then they gave out money in scholarships from the interest. So I think by striking that word, it would be more in line with the intent, I believe, that we had when we did that.
Well, let's move forward with the understanding we're working on this. And there'll be a place at some point where we can do it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Any other questions to the bill as amended? Then I'm going to renew my motion that House File 4024 as amended be placed on the general register. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion prevails, the bill is adopted, and members, the committee is adjourned.